Tzadi Zayinim at base, 5 lines from the top at the 2 dots. We learned the machlekes in the Mishnah if the tefillin is outside and laying in a place where it's a kind of being chas v'sholom disgraced. So we have 2 different ways of bringing it in if you can't wear them. One is to walk less than 4 amos at a time, and Rosh Hashanah says it's preferable to, rather than do that, is to pass it from one to another, to make a chain, and pass it from one to the other, rather than to go pachas me dalet amos. What's the basis of the machlekes? Or explains Mar, so the Tanakama holds pachas me arba amos adip. It's preferable to carry it at intervals less than dalet amos. Why? Because if you say that you pass it from one to the other, it becomes public knowledge, it becomes disrespectful, and a bezoin for Shabbos. And rather not do something which will create a commotion and create something that could be a chilul, a disgrace for the Shabbos. Umar Sabra and Rav Shimon holds nice in the Chaver Adif. It's better to pass it to his friend because because if you're going to say that he should take it less than dalet amos at a time, there could be problematic because sometimes it'll come out the lav zimna daita. He might not realize what he's doing. He might come to carry it dalet amos. He might not realize, and he may possibly not do it intervals less than dalet amos, and he'll come to do it more than dalet amos. It's a greater risk that he might come to be over the deraisa. Therefore, rather do it this way to ensure as best as possible that he doesn't come to be over the deraisa. The Mishnah continues as v'chein b'nai, and similarly, if he has a child out there, from the city, away from the city, he also makes a human chain and passes it from one to the other. Like the Gemara Benoi, my boy Hasim, what is his son doing out in the field? What is the son doing there? The way the Ritva explains it is as follows, meaning, if he's in the field, it's because of the negligence of the parents. If he's in the field because his parents did not do what they were supposed to do. Now, as a Rishonim speak out, we're not talking in a case over here of sakonas nefashos. It's not a case of sakonas nefashos. But if there was negligence and there's no sakonas nefashos, so the way the Ritva explains it is that we would not allow any kind of heter over here. So what are the circumstances over here that it's not a sakana, but it's not negligence, and that we say we would allow a kula and to transport it in this manner? So the Meir Menashe Tana, he learns it because Shalda Ima Besada. As Shaldasa Ima Besada, she gave birth in the field, and therefore the baby's now in the field. We allow this kula to transport him in this way. Umaya filo heina meya. What does it mean to say if there's 100 people? What's the chiddush of this? What does it mean to tell you with this? So the answer is daflagav the kashle yada. Even though it's difficult for the child being passed from one hand to the other hand, it's somewhat difficult for the child. If it's better to do this than do the alternative of pachas medalet amos. Again, where there's no sakona, of course, no sakona to the child involved. Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yehuda says, and they say for the Mishnah, he says a person can give a barrel that has water to his friend, and his friend to his friend, that they can transport it, and even though it goes outside the owner's tchum, doesn't Rabbi Yehuda hold that we learn in the Mishnah that behema kelim, animals or utensils, are like the feet of the owners. Wherever the owner could go, they can be taken. They have the tchum of the owner. So how can it be that this is beyond the owner's tchum, and we allow you to transport this barrel of water outside the owner's tchum? The barrel of water would have the tchum of the owner. He explains, where he pours the water from one barrel to another, meaning he's not transporting the barrel, taking it from one to another and just moving it down the chain. He has a barrel of water, he pours it from this barrel to another container. The one that receives it for him is receiving him in his container, and then the other one to his container, and so forth. Meaning it's not transporting the barrel, it's transporting the contents which are being poured from one barrel to the other. So therefore, even though the barrel has the ragle of the owner, but that barrel is not being transported. So therefore, that barrel is not being taken outside the tchum. Rav Yehuda Tamei is going with his opinion. That water, we don't treat it as having substance, and therefore, even though the water is outside the tchum of the owner, that's not a problem. If the barrel would be outside the tchum of the owner, it would be, but it's only the water, and water, ma'im ben mamish, it has no substance. It's not Rav Yehuda pater b'mayim mipnei shein ben mamish. Now Rav Yehuda paters with water because it's not considered ein ben mamish. So the case over there is talking in Be'ah, in the Mishnah in Be'ah, where the bread is made, the dough is made with ingredients from two different women. One woman has the flour, and the other one has the water and the salt. So the Mishnah says that it's keragli shteim. It can only be taken on the common area of the tchum of both women, because there are ingredients that belong to both, and therefore the tchum of both owners are what governs where the isa can be taken. But Rav Yehuda says no, he's paiter b'mayim. The owner of the water, that's not significant, and that's not going to restrict where this can be taken, because the water is considered to be ein behem mamish. So here also, we'll say that since the barrel is not being transported outside the tchum, the water is of no significance. What does it mean that this cannot go further? Well, if this is the case that we're talking about, that the barrel is not taken further, what does it mean over here that when they said that the Rabbanan said no, they objected, and they said to this cannot be taken more than the owners? If we're learning that the barrel is not being taken out the tchum, what is the objection? The more answer is it means that the contents of this, what is inside the barrel, the water cannot be taken outside the tchum of the owner. That the water is yesh by mamish, so it cannot be taken outside the tchum. Frank the Gemara, how can you say this pshat? Ema the shamalai the Rav Yehuda, where the Rav Yehuda said the water ain't by mamish. That's heichad the beliba beisa. That's where, in the case that we're talking over there, that it was the dough, so the water was absorbed into the dough. So it's not be'en, it's absorbed in the dough as part and parcel of the dough. So it's considered to be bottle. But hechad is no be'eneo. But where you can see the water, it's water in a barrel. Are you going to say that it's ein bo mamish, and we don't have to consider its tchum? Mishamadleu. Who said in such a place? Where do we see in such a place that water that's be'en is ein bo mamish? Hashta, and I'll prove it to you, because hashta b'kedera meriurale botle. If we're talking about water that's in a pot, and that it's mixed with other ingredients, so it's not water on its own, but it's mixed with other ingredients, but it's not absorbed into a solid. So he says in that case, he says like batle. Be'enayu batle. Are you going to say water that's be'en, that's in a barrel, that's be'en, that we see it and it's discernible, that you're going to say it's a bottle? It's not even mixed with anything else. The Sanya Rav Yehuda Omer Maim Melch B'Telim B'Isa Vein B'Telim B'Gedera. But the water and salt are not bottled in a pot of cooked food. They righton because of the righton of the gravy. So over there, even though it's a mixture of the water with other ingredients, but it's not bottled, it's discernible, it's not bottled. He says it's bottled if it's absorbed into the dough, into the solid. So you're going to say here that water in the barrel is bottled? So that can't be the pshat. What are we talking about over here? What we're dealing with over here is a chavish shekonsa shvisa, that the barrel has the owner has a shisa, the tchum of the owner, but the water is like konsa shvisa. The water is not concept shvisa because we're talking about a case where the water was drawn on Shabbos or on Yom Tov from a flowing river, meaning on the onset of Shabbos, this water was not here. So therefore, it was not kinda its own shvisa. It was flowing water. Didn't have its own tchum. The barrel has the tchum of the owner. The barrel has it, but the water was not over here, didn't have an owner on the onset of Shabbos, and therefore came from a river, it was flowing, it was not kind of shvisa, and now therefore there's no restriction about taking outside the tchum. So over here, we're talking about b'chav shekonsa shvisa, ma'im shloi konsa kona shvisa askina. That's what we're dealing with. The bottle chavis legami ma'im, that the chavis is bottled to the water. Now we don't have to say therefore that we're talking where he emptied out the contents from one person to the other person. He can be talking where he just passed the barrel along, but we're talking where the barrel has a tchum. The water has no restrictions of a tchum, and therefore the water can be taken outside the tchum of the owner. The barrel on its own cannot, but the barrel is subordinate to the water. It's bottled to the water. And therefore, the water can be taken outside the owner's tchum, so can the barrel. The bottle chavos legabi mayim, like we learned, that we see in such a case that we say that it's bottled to the other. It's not like we learned, if a person takes out a living person on a bed. So we have a principle that achai noise es atzmai. There is no iser deraisa, there's no malach for carrying a live person. He's considered to be some assisting in the carrying because he himself supports part of his weight. Live weight is less than dead weight, and therefore the person who carries a living person, there's no chiyuv deraisa, there's no malach deraisa. Now even if he carries it on a bed, so if he would carry the bed on its own, there would be a malach of carrying. But his purpose is to carry the chai. He carries it on the bed. He's potter even on the bed. So he's potter even on the bed. Because the mita is considered bottled to the living person. And similarly, if he takes out food, it's less than a shear. So he's potter on taking out the oichlen because it's less than a shear. So he's maisi oichlin pachs mikashim bikli in a kli in a vessel. Potter afal kli. He's potter on the kli as well because it's bottled. So here also the water is bottled to the barrel. So therefore we're discussing over here a case where the water was drawn on Shabbos from a river. So therefore on the onset of Shabbos the water was hefker. It did not acquire the tchum of the owner. And it didn't acquire its own tchum because it was moving, it was flowing, it wasn't stationary, it doesn't have its own tchum. So the water can be carried beyond the tchum of the owner. And therefore, we say over here that Rabbi Yehuda applies the principle of bittul, and therefore we say that the barrel is bottled to the water. The water can be taken outside its tchum, even though the barrel on its own could not be, but the water could be, and the barrel is bottled to the water, so therefore the entire barrel with the water can be taken outside the tchum. Rashi says that the Rabbanan argue with Rabbi Yehuda on this point, and they say that it's not bottled. Rishonim have a difficulty with this Rashi because it would seem to be that this mission is agreed to by everybody. So why would it be that the Rabbanan would argue? The Ravid says, he explains that where do we say this concept of bittul? That's, for instance, in the case of the Mishnah, Maitzi Chai b'mita, where the one thing that's more choshev is the chai, so the mita is bottled. Or we're talking over there where the food is more choshev than the kli. But when you have a case like this, where there's a barrel in the barrel is more choshev than the water. So we can't say that the water is bottled. We can't say over here that the kli is bottled to the water because the kli is more choshev than the water, so we can't apply bittul over here. That's why the Rabbanan argue over here. The other Rishonim don't agree with this. L'chaira, one would say that it is difficult because the case of the Mishnah over there is talking about it's less than a shear, it's a small amount of food, a very small amount of food. To say that the kli is bottled to that would be difficult. The Rashba, the Ritba say a different shot. They say is even though that's true that the Mishnah says you're potter, but that's potter of a loss. It's not mutter. It's still an issur d'Rabbanan. And over here, we're talking to say that to allow it to be mutter l'chadchila, to go outside the tchum. So the Rabbanan say, even though you're potter, we would not allow you to take it outside the tchum under those circumstances and apply bittul to say l'chadchila that it's mutter to take it outside the tchum. So the Gemara writes, "Masiv Rav Yosef Asakash Rav Yehuda B'Shayara in a case of a caravan." So as the Rishonim speak out, it's not Sekonos Tafarshus, but they're in a caravan and it's difficult and they have tsar if they can't get the access to water. There we say, he can pass a barrel to his friend, and his friend to another friend. Over there, we allow you to make a human chain. B'shayara in, it's only over there because there's tsar, but shaloi b'shayara loy, but it's mashma, that if it would be not in a shayara, we would not allow this kula. Elamar Rav Yosef says, Kitan nami mas nisem b'shayara tanan en chanami. The case that we're talking about is a shayara. It's talking about it's a caravan. They're traveling. It's a caravan. It's difficult for them to access the water. We make it cool in this case. Omar Abai, so the Abai explains as follows. B'shayara, in a case where there's a shayara caravan, afil chavish shekonsa shvisa, umayim shekona shvisa. In a case of shayara, even if the chavis and the mayim are kind of shvisa, therefore the tchum of the owner. And normally you could not carry it beyond the tchum of the owner, but since, because of it's a mokum tsar, we allowed you to now transport it in this manner. So if it's a shayara, but if it's not with a shayara, we can be talking like Rava said beforehand, that the chavis konsa shvisa umayim shaloi konu shvisa, and the mayim is not konu shvisa, and the barrel is bottled to the water. Meaning, even though we said that it says b'shayara, Yehuda says it's via shayara, but the way Abai says to make it consistent with what Rava's teretz is, it's not only by a shayara, it's by a shayara, even if the mayim and the chavis are konu shvisa. And if it's not shaloi b'shayara, it's only if the mayim was like konsa. Rav Ashi gives a different explanation. He says, we're talking over here where the barrel is hefker, umayim the hefker askinan. It's the barrel and water are both hefker, meaning, and therefore they don't have their own tchum, and therefore there's no restriction on where they can be taken. And the way Taisus, now this Taisus learns in the second shot of Taisus, is learning as follows. And the people who passed it from one to other, they did not intend to be kained either. They also did not have intent to be kained. So therefore, it's a davar shel hefker. And therefore, it's not governed by any tchum. And therefore, it can be passed from one to the other. And therefore, we say over here they can be passed from one to the other. There's no tchum, and there's no restriction on taking it and carrying it from one to the other. Uman Amruloi, and who's the Tana that says that you cannot do that, that there's a problem with this? Uman Amruloi, that's Rav Yechon ben Dori. The Amar Chavsei Hefker kind of shisa, who says that Chavsei Hefker, even if it is Hefker, it's still kind of shisa. And it doesn't matter, you're still governed by where this item was on the onset of Shabbos. You cannot carry it more than 2,000 amas outside from where it was, where this item was at the onset of Shabbos. So you are governed by a tchum, and therefore you cannot pass it along in this manner. And what does it mean that this can't go more than the regal of the balam of the owner? It means they can't go beyond the area that is if they had balam. If they had balam, they would be governed by a tchum. So here also we say that they're governed by a tchum, even though they are hefker. So that's why you can't pass it from one to the other. if it's outside, you can't pass it. It's outside the tchum from where these items. It's outside 2,000 amas from where these items were on the onset of Shabbos. The Rabbi Yehuda holds that he can pass it from one to the other. Now, even though each one of these people have their own tchum, and this item is being passed beyond and going outside their individual tchumim, but it's hefker, so it's not governed by their tchum. But the Amrullah, Rav Yochanan ben Nuri, says no, it has its own tchum, and therefore it cannot be passed outside 2,000 amas from where it was on the onset of Shabbos.